Antoinette Frank is still alive. She is sitting on Louisiana's death row right now, the only woman on it, and she has been there since 1995. She was a sworn officer of the New Orleans Police Department. She carried a badge, a gun, and the legal authority of the state of Louisiana. She used all of that to walk into a family restaurant in the middle of the night and kill 3 people. 2 of them the children of people who had fed her and given her gifts and treated her like one of their own. One of the 3 she killed was her fellow officer, her partner, a man she had worked alongside. She did it for the cash in the register. If you follow cases where the system had every reason to stop someone before they caused harm and chose not to, subscribe now. This case has that failure written into every layer of the official record, and we are going to go through every single one of those layers. Before we get to Antoinette Frank, we need to talk about who she took from the world. Ronald Austin Ronnie Williams II was 25 years old. He had graduated from Brother Martin High School in 1987 and married his high school sweetheart, Mary Burris, whose family had lived across the street from his. Their first son, Christopher, was born in 1989. Ronnie joined the NOPD in 1992. He worked night security detail at the Kim On restaurant to supplement his salary. He had a second son, Patrick, born in February 1995. Patrick was 1 week old when his father was killed. Ronnie Williams never knew his second son as a living father for more than days. His name is now on the memorial wall at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. Hey Vu was 24 years old. She was the daughter of Nguyet Nguyen and Beach Vu, the founders of the Kim On restaurant. She worked in her family's kitchen. She was there that night because it was her family's business and her family's livelihood. Her mother, Nguyet, told reporters years later, "They felt like friends and family, and they turn around and kill our family." Quang Vu was 17 years old. He was Ha's brother. He worked in the kitchen alongside her. He was the youngest person killed that night. The next day, March 5th, 1995, his mother knelt in the spot in the Kim On kitchen where her 2 children had been shot and killed as they reportedly said their final prayers. Chow Vu was 23 years old that night. She survived by hiding in the walk-in cooler with her brother Kwok and another restaurant employee. When Frank returned to the scene in a patrol car and pretended to be responding to the call, Chow Vu looked at her and said, "You saw what happened. You killed my brother and sister." Chow Vu has had to relive that night every time this case has come back before a court. She told reporters in 2015, "I want to close the book and open a new chapter in my life. Just close the book." Every subsequent proceeding has reopened that wound. Kwok Vu was 19 years old. He also survived in the walk-in cooler. When police asked him immediately after whether he had seen who did the shooting, he said, "Yes, I saw the partial side of her." He subsequently identified Frank at trial. The Vu family kept the Kim On open for a decade after the murders. Hurricane Katrina flooded the building in 2005 and ended that. Post-storm looters then broke in and stole jewelry that Ha and Quang had been wearing when they were killed. Items their family had kept as relics of their murdered children, gone now. Antoinette Renee Frank. She was born April 30th, 1971, in Opelousas, Louisiana. She had an early interest in law enforcement. She was a member of the Opelousas Junior Police and the New Orleans Police Explorers. After graduating high school in May 1989, she moved to New Orleans alone, worked at a Walmart, and planned to join the NOPD as soon as she turned 20, the minimum age to apply. On April 30th, 1991, she applied. She failed the psychological examination. The department's evaluation concluded she had a tendency to lie and to over-exaggerate her skills and her background. She was not hired. She came back, and the NOPD had a loophole. A prospective officer could submit to a psychiatric evaluation from a private doctor instead. Frank did that. The private assessment was favorable. The department hired her on February 7th, 1993. She went straight to the academy and graduated February 28th, near the top of her class. Her fellow officers thought she was shy. They also thought she had no idea what police work actually required and that she lacked the decisiveness to function effectively. They thought she could veer into irrational behavior. The Vu family, by contrast, took to her warmly. Frank worked off-duty security at the Kim On. According to her former partner, the Vus were, in his words, in love with this girl. They bought her presents for this, presents for that. Here is what the official record actually showed about Antoinette Frank before she ever walked into that restaurant with a gun. The NOPD had, before they hired her, no fewer than 4 formally documented indicators that she was unfit for armed service. First, she lied on her application and during her pre-employment interview. Second, she failed 2 psychiatric evaluations, including the department's own. Third, department psychiatrist Philip Scuria examined her and put his recommendation in writing. He said she was shallow and superficial, and advised in no uncertain terms that she should not be hired. Fourth, while Frank was still at the academy, her father reported her missing after finding a note in which she described herself as doomed since the day I was born. She returned shortly afterward. The NOPD knew about the note. No disqualification followed. The NOPD was in crisis. CBS's Mike Wallace had branded New Orleans the #1 city in the nation for police brutality and corruption. Mayor Mark Morial said, upon taking office, that he had inherited a police department that was a shambles. The department was chronically short-handed, losing officers faster than it could replace them, its ranks having been decimated by arrests for murder and drug activity. The department overrode its own screening process and handed Frank a badge. It did not stop there. As early as August 1993, just 6 months into Frank's career, her superiors wanted to send her back to the academy for further training. She was not sent back. She was placed in more frequent supervisory review and remained on active duty. Then Rogers Lacaze entered the picture. Frank first encountered Lacaze when she took his statement after he was shot on the street. The Department of Corrections investigator believed their first contact was November 25, 1994, though Frank later claimed they had met 8 months before the murders. That dispute has never been resolved. What is not disputed is what followed. Lacaze was just past 18. He already had a history of violence and drug dealing. His own mother had kicked him out of her home when he was 17. Frank later maintained that their relationship was platonic and that she had only been mentoring him. The DOC investigator described them as probable lovers. The true nature of their relationship is disputed, and no court has definitively resolved it. What is not disputed is what other officers saw. They witnessed Lacaze driving Frank's personal car. They observed him moving her police unit at the scene of an accident she was investigating. On one occasion, Frank brought Lacaze along on a complaint call and introduced him as a trainee. On other occasions, she introduced him as her nephew. An active drug dealer had operational access to an NOPD patrol vehicle. Multiple named 7th District officers saw this. No formal disciplinary action against Frank for any of this conduct appears in any publicly available record. Before the Kim Ah murders, trial witnesses testified that Frank and Lacaze had been pulling civilians over in her police car and robbing them. It is not clear from the public record whether any formal complaint about this reached NOPD supervisors before March 4, 1995. If it did, nothing was done. The planning for the Kim An robbery was not impulsive. It was methodical, and it was documented. Frank knew the restaurant's layout. She knew the Vu family distrusted banks and kept substantial cash on the premises. She reportedly learned that Officer Williams was earning more than she was from the security detail. She and Lacaze decided to rob the place. The day before the murders, March 3rd, Frank attempted to purchase 9mm ammunition at a Walmart for Lacaze. That evening, at approximately 9 p.m., Frank phoned the Kim An from the 7th District Police Station. Chow Vu answered. Frank asked whether she was needed for security that night. Chow told her that Officer Williams was already there. Frank now knew who was working. Then came the approach. Frank's shift ended at 11 p.m. She went home, changed out of her uniform, picked up Lacaze, and drove to the restaurant. They went inside under the pretense of getting food. Then they left. Chow Vu, after they left, discovered she could not find the front door key. She was already suspicious. Frank and Lacaze returned. Chow Vu saw them coming and hid the restaurant's cash in the microwave. She went to the front to pay Officer Williams for the night. Then Frank opened the front door with a stolen key. She immediately began pushing Chow, Kwok, and another worker toward the kitchen. Williams, confused, followed to see what was happening. Shots rang out. Frank ran back to the front of the restaurant. Chow Kwok and the employee reached the walk-in cooler and locked themselves inside. In the kitchen, Frank shot Ha Vu and Quang Vu. She later confessed to this at police headquarters on tape with a recorder placed in front of her. Ha was 24, Quang was 17. Ballistic evidence established that the same 9mm pistol killed all 3 victims that night. Frank denied shooting Officer Williams. She attributed that murder to Lacaze. The jury did not accept that account. The ballistic evidence showed one weapon. One weapon killed all 3 people. Ronald Williams was 25 years old. His son Patrick had been alive for 1 week. After the murders, Frank and Lacaze left the scene. Approximately 45 minutes later, Lacaze used Williams' credit card to buy $15 worth of gas at a station 3 blocks from his brother's home in Gretna. Then Antoinette Frank did something that, 30 years later, still makes people stop when they hear it. She came back. She drove a police patrol car to the Kim An restaurant while the crime scene was still active and the 3 people she had just killed were still lying where she had left them. She walked in. She asked the survivors what had happened. Chow Vu looked at her and said, "You saw what happened. You killed my brother and sister." Detectives Eddie Rance and Dema were on scene. Rance watched Frank. He watched her start talking about Rogers Lacaze. He realized she was not a witness. He walked to the parking lot and found Superintendent Richard Pennington. His words, "We're about to book this motherfucker with 3 counts of first-degree murder." Rance later said, "I wanted to vomit." Frank was arrested at the scene on March 4th, 1995. Lacaze was picked up later that night. Both were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. At police headquarters, Frank gave a nearly 2-hour recorded statement. She admitted on tape to shooting Ha Vu and Quang Vu in the kitchen. Her stated justification was that Rogers Lacaze made her do it. She refused to admit to shooting Ronnie Williams. There is a disputed claim worth stating clearly here. In a 2013 post-conviction hearing related to Lacaze, a state witness testified that Lacaze had told him Frank tried to shield the victims from him, and that Lacaze pressed a gun to the back of Frank's head and told her she was going to shoot someone too, because he was not going down alone. Frank's current attorneys advance this as evidence of duress. The prosecution's position has consistently been that the taped confession, the ballistic evidence, and the eyewitness accounts establish Frank as a willing principal in all 3 murders. The original jury took 22 minutes to convict her on all 3 counts. No court has accepted the duress claim to date. Frank and Lacaze were indicted by an Orleans Parish grand jury on April 28, 1995. Their trials were severed. Lacaze went to trial July 17, 1995. He took the stand and claimed he was playing pool with his brother at the time of the murders. The jury rejected this. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Frank's trial followed approximately 2 months later. Prosecutors Glenn Woods and Elizabeth Teal presented the taped confession, the eyewitness testimony of Cho Vu and Kwok Vu, the ballistic evidence linking all 3 murders to the same weapon, the stolen credit card Lacaze used within 45 minutes of the murders, the stolen door key, and a jury visit to the Kim An restaurant itself. The defense called not one witness, not one. After prosecutors rested, Frank's attorneys had subpoenaed nearly 40 witnesses. They called none of them. This complete absence of a penalty phase defense became the central pillar of Frank's post-conviction ineffective assistance of counsel claim. At the time, the jury saw nothing from the defense. They deliberated for 22 minutes, guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. On October 20th, 1995, Judge Frank Marullo sentenced Antoinette Frank to death by lethal injection. Prosecutor Glenn Woods said, "It would have been a mockery of justice if Antoinette Frank was to walk away without getting the death penalty." 1 month after Frank received her death sentence, in November 1995, a dog led police to a human skull with a bullet hole buried under Frank's house. Police and prosecutors believed the skull belonged to Adam Frank, her father, who had stayed with her in 1993 and whom she had subsequently reported missing. No charges have ever been filed. The identification has not been publicly confirmed through documented DNA evidence in available records. This remains an uninvestigated allegation. No charges, no trial, no conviction. Frank has spent the 3 decades since fighting her sentence. In 2006, her attorneys argued before the Louisiana Supreme Court that she had been denied state-funded experts for the sentencing phase. In 2007, the Louisiana Supreme Court affirmed her conviction and death sentence. In 2008, her conviction was declared final, and a previously issued death warrant was recalled pending post-conviction appeal. In 2013, the post-conviction testimony regarding the duress claim entered the record in Lacaze's case, as described above. That testimony is part of Frank's current legal argument, but has not been accepted by any court. In 2015, Lacaze's death sentence was vacated by a judge who found a former law enforcement officer had improperly served on his jury. In 2019, Lacaze was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after a partially successful challenge based on ineffective assistance of counsel. Frank, the only person with the badge, the keys, and the established plan, remained alone on death row. In October 2023, Frank's bid for a clemency hearing failed on a 2-2 vote at the Louisiana Pardon Board. In February 2025, Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill initially claimed Frank was eligible for execution under Governor Jeff Landry's announcement that Louisiana would resume executions. The DA and AG subsequently agreed she was not yet eligible because her post-conviction appeal remained active. A post-conviction hearing was held March 31, 2025. On May 15, 2025, Criminal District Court Judge Kimya Holmes denied all of the state's procedural objections and accepted Frank's petition. In October 2025, the Louisiana Supreme Court ruled 5-2 that Attorney General Murrill could intervene in the case. An evidentiary hearing was scheduled for the week of December 16, 2025. The outcome of that hearing has not appeared in available public records. In March and April 2026, the Louisiana Supreme Court unanimously overturned Holmes's earlier ruling on one issue, finding the district judge had abused her discretion in denying the state a specific hearing on the timing of Frank's post-conviction claims. That hearing had not been scheduled as of April 2026. Frank's attorneys have stated publicly that post-conviction investigation confirms she was not a willing participant in the events at the Kim An. They have raised claims about alleged childhood abuse by her father, evidence they argue was never presented to the jury and could have constituted mitigating evidence at the penalty phase. The prosecution and the state oppose these claims as belated and unverified. No court has yet ruled on their merit. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill has said, "These victims deserve justice, not just in Antoinette Frank's case, but in every case. If we are going to have a death penalty, then we should be able to carry it out." Frank has been incarcerated since 1995 at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in St. Gabriel, Louisiana. She is the only woman on the state's death row. She cannot be executed until her post-conviction appeals are exhausted. No execution date has been set. Under Act 393 of 2025, Louisiana courts face a July 1, 2026 deadline to rule on post-conviction applications filed before July 1, 2023. Ronnie Williams is on the memorial wall in Washington. His son Patrick, born 1 week before his father was murdered, is now 31 years old. The altar at the Vu family home carries portraits of Ha, Xuang, and Ronnie Williams. Nguyet Nguyen, who knelt in the kitchen of her restaurant the day after her children were killed in the spot where they died, said that having to go through the legal process again hurts, but added, "If the justice system wants to do their part, then let them handle it." Sho Vu, who looked Frank in the face the night of the murders and told her exactly what she had seen, is still waiting for it to end. The NOPD had 4 formally documented reasons not to give Antoinette Frank a badge. It overrode all of them. After hire, supervisors saw the warning signs and did not act. Officers watched a drug dealer operate out of an NOPD patrol car and filed no formal complaint. 3 people are dead as a direct result of the access that badge gave her. Rogers Lacaze is serving life. Antoinette Frank is still on death row. They were convicted of the same 3 murders. Whether that is an equal application of justice or whether it tells us something about how the death penalty actually gets applied, leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe if you want to keep following cases like this one. The debate below is open. Drop your take.